begins in the London sewer, where Arthur and George are doing a detailed inspection. Arthur has been doing this for a long time, and even seems to enjoy the job, much to George's surprise, who is only there because of community service. The two hear what seems to be a woman's scream, and Arthur says it's just an echo. They continue down the sewer until Arthur is startled by a hole that reveals a new corridor. He says he has worked in the tunnels for over 20 years and has never seen this. As the water level is higher inside and visibility is poor, George decides to wait where he is, saying he doesn't know how to swim. Intrigued by the unexpected size of the hidden corridor, Arthur slowly moves forward with the flashlight. When his foot gets caught on something and he almost loses his balance, the beam of light briefly passes over something that looks like a person. After a while, George starts to get worried and calls out to his colleague several times. Getting no response, he decides to enter the tunnel to look for him, but still thinks Arthur might be playing a prank on him. It is then that he hears a woman screaming, this time quite clearly. As he walks towards the sound, we see a shadow passing on the other side of the corridor. George finds Arthur lying on the ground in shock. He tries to ask what he saw that was so frightening, but his colleague cannot even respond. Suddenly, a girl who seems to have been attacked emerges from the darkness. She gives one last scream before being violently pulled away. Then we meet a young German woman named Kate, who is at a work event looking for her friend Gemma. One of her colleagues is a man named Guy, who insists on flirting with her and doesn't take a hint even with her rude responses. Then Kate finds another colleague and shares a secret. She found out that actor George Clooney is in London. Gemma even found out which party he is going to today and managed to get VIP invites to the club. Kate confesses that she hopes to get an autograph, and who knows, maybe something more. But then her friends inform her that Gemma has already left. Kate is disappointed, but doesn't give up on the plan and decides to go to the party alone. As it is difficult to find a free taxi, she goes to withdraw cash for the subway, and a man sitting on the street asks her for a coin. With sarcasm, she replies that only bills come out of the ATM, and if he wants coins, he should have sat next to a payphone. Soon, fate punishes Kate for her rudeness, as the machine that dispenses subway tickets does not accept large notes. A young homeless woman with a dog notices Kate's urgency and informs her that she has tickets for sale. Each one costs less than £2, but Kate is so grateful that she offers 20. Going down to the platform, she sees that the last train is coming in 8 minutes and takes the opportunity to have a few sips of her drink. Then she leans her head back to rest a little and ends up falling asleep. When she wakes up, there is no one left on the platform, and the monitor is off. Going up to the turnstiles, she sees that the station has closed with her inside. No one answers when she screams and shakes the gate. Furthermore, her phone's battery has died, and she cannot inform her friends that she is trapped. Panic is starting to set in when she hears a train arriving and rushes down to board, not noticing the person who entered the back car very quickly. Kate's relief does not last long, as the train stops and gets stuck before reaching the next station. Annoyed, she crosses the cars to the motorman's cabin and starts banging on the door. On the other side, we see that he is not in a condition to attend to her, as he has just been attacked by something or someone. The lights go out suddenly, and Kate sees a man with a flashlight in the last car. Thinking he is a subway worker, she walks over to him and starts complaining about being locked in. Seeing that the man does not respond and is taking steps towards her, she lies that her boyfriend is nearby and tries to run, but ends up tripping. When the man gets close to her, Kate is relieved to see that it is her colleague, Guy. He laughs and turns on the lights, saying it was just a prank. But things start to get serious when Kate realizes that he has been following her this whole time. Her fears are confirmed when he starts making disrespectful advances and even unzips to show off his skills. She says it looks like a miniature, and this hits Guy's ego so hard that he resorts to physical attack, throwing Kate to the ground. However, as soon as he settles on top of her, something drags him out of the car. After several screams of pain and the sound of some blows, everything goes silent for a few moments. Then Guy suddenly resurfaces, and Kate is shocked by his condition. Barely able to speak, he tells her to run away from there and is dragged away again. Kate takes off running through the cars and hides in the back cabin. A few seconds later, she hears the mysterious attacker approaching and sees his shadow beneath the door. With little choice, she exits through the back door and runs along the tracks to the platform. As a figure briefly appears in the train car door, Kate runs up and tries to use the payphone, but she is still out of coins. Exhausted, she sits on the ground for a moment to catch her breath. Then she hears what seems to be the sound of a hinge and gets very scared, but it is just the dog of the woman who sold her the ticket. Deducing that she must be nearby, Kate follows him through a small door and ends up in a restricted area where Jimmy and Mandy are sleeping. Jimmy wakes up startled by the visit and explains that his girlfriend won't be able to talk much since she is under the influence of many substances. Then Kate tells him everything that happened, but Jimmy doesn't seem to care. In his opinion, she should be grateful to whoever gave Guy what he deserved. He also says the only guard is the one who stays in the control room, but Jimmy explains that he can't interfere with him because there is a sort of agreement. As long as the homeless don't bother the guard leaves the homeless in peace. Kate is indignant to see that Jimmy won't do anything and pretends not to hear when he offers a sleeping bag for her to spend the night there with them. She offers £50 for Jimmy to take her to the guard, and this quickly changes his mind. As the two walk to the control room, Mandy wakes up to the noise of the huge rats that have spread through the station. Seeing her dog Ray among them, she runs to get him out of there, but suddenly stops, a look of terror on her face, and lets out a blood-curdling scream. The other two are too far away at this point and do not hear anything. Jimmy is talking about the winter shelter and the difficulty of finding a spot when Kate interrupts him. She says she doesn't want to hear about his problems while there is a maniac on the loose, and the priority now is to talk to the guard. A little offended, Jimmy comments that she is very rude and selfish. Before she can retort, someone starts calling her name, and she recognizes the voice. Guy is sobbing and dragging himself along the side of the tracks with great difficulty. Kate asks Jimmy to get him out of there, but he doesn't want to help someone who grabs others by force. She offers another £50, and Jimmy angrily accepts, cursing Guy the whole way as he walks over to him. But then he sees that the other is really badly injured and begins to be more committed to the rescue. Kate helps him lift Guy, and they lay him on the platform. At that moment, Ray appears near them, and Kate sees that there are bloodstains on his fur. Jimmy panics and runs away, but Mandy is no longer where he left her. There is a trail of blood on the floor of the station, which goes through the closed gate until now. Jimmy tries to follow it, but he can't find his girlfriend and becomes desperate. Still caring for Guy, Kate notices an emergency button on the wall and begins to press it. In the control room, guard Roger rolls his eyes when the call interrupts his crossword puzzle. Kate cheers upon hearing his voice and explains that someone is on the brink of death. Suspicious, Roger asks if she is one of the homeless, and Kate waves to the camera, showing that she is not. However, the guard says that he doesn't see anyone injured and tells her to bring Guy to where the camera can see him, as he doesn't want to waste time on the ramblings and madness of homeless people. When Kate goes to get him, she discovers that he has already succumbed. Enraged, she drags the body to the middle of the platform and starts shouting, asking if a murder is enough to make the guard move. All of Roger's arrogance disappears when he realizes the enormous problem on his hands, and when he turns in his chair, the control room is full of rats. Roger tries to scare the critters away, and then his head is grabbed by someone who appears to be covered in wounds. Through the emergency intercom, Kate hears the guard's final moments and understands that this hope is gone. Roger is dragged over the rats, and Kate looks for Jimmy to see if there is another guard at the next station. He is very agitated, as he has injected something to numb his pain, but he eventually agrees to go with her. While Guy is being dragged down the left tunnel, the two enter the right one and begin the walk. When they reach the middle of the tunnel, Kate hears a noise, and Jimmy says a train is coming. They run until they reach a lateral platform, and Kate is distressed to see that the train is stopping. Jimmy says any driver would stop upon seeing two people on the tracks, but Kate thinks it's safer to assume that whoever is driving that train is the murderer. Hearing this, Jimmy says he wants to confront the man who attacked Mandy and tells Kate to run away with the dog. She obeys him, but changes her mind when she hears him get into the train yelling threats. Inside, Jimmy finds Roger lying down and falls into the trap, getting closer to look. Kate appears just as he is in the area between the cars, and his head is grabbed by the maniac's arms. He begins to struggle violently, but he does not resist for long. In shock, Kate runs to the platform passage and tries to climb a ramp, but ends up falling into the sewer. After facing what remains of Arthur, she avoids the debris until she reaches the stairs and climbs up to the station level. Arriving at what seems to be an archive area, she runs from room to room trying to find someone, and then the lights go out suddenly. She still has the flashlight, but she knows the beam of light will show the maniac where she is. Therefore, she crouches behind a pile of boxes and turns off the flashlight, waiting. After a few moments of complete silence, she turns it back on and illuminates the maniac's face right in front of her. Everything goes dark, and then we see the maniac entering a kind of cell where he begins to dissect one of his recent victims. Coming out of there, he goes to an area with several cages partially submerged in the sewer, and we see George trapped in one of them. When poked, he grumbles that he is still alive. Then the maniac moves to the next cage and finds a dead person, which he takes with him upstairs. After he leaves, we see that Kate is trapped in one of the cages. She starts talking to George, and he tells her to ignore the screams coming from upstairs from time to time. Suddenly, he gets startled by something touching his leg. Seeing that it is nothing serious, George calms down again. But Kate notices that if it wasn't there before, then there must be a passage at the bottom of the bars. If George can squeeze out, he could reach the cage that is open. However, he says he doesn't know how to swim and doesn't want to try such a plan. Then she holds her breath and dives, while George watches, full of expectation. Kate resurfaces inside the adjacent cage, proving her theory. Much more excited, George says that only one more is left. However, the maniac appears at the door just as she is diving. George pretends to be dead to distract him and does his best not to react when being poked. Kate manages to get out through the open cage and finds her own shoe lying on the floor. When the murderer applies more force and George begins to scream, she shoves the heel of the shoe right into his eye. As he screams and writhes in pain, she opens the cage and frees George. Despite the initial cowardice, he turns out to be a gentleman during the escape, lending her his jacket and covering Kate's eye when they come across the remains of a previous victim. Then the two cross several passages and reach a wing of an abandoned hospital. One of the doors indicates that it is the operating room, but inside there are only cribs and some creepy toys that share the shelf with fetuses. In the next room, Mandy is tied to a chair and covered in blood. Kate asks George to check if she is still alive, but his cowardice resurfaces at that moment. Lacking the courage to get too close, he shakes Mandy's foot and concludes that she is gone. Kate leaves crying and nearly breaks down, saying this is all her fault. If she hadn't pushed Jimmy away from Mandy, she would still be alive now. George tries to calm her down, fearing that her screams will attract danger. He says he has a daughter and really wants to see her again. Kate can still do the right thing if she helps him get out of this alive. As he says all this, Mandy starts to lift her head, making a huge effort to grab their attention and plead for help, but the two leave without looking at her again. Reaching a door with the exit sign, they are startled to find a solid wall when they open it. The same thing happens with the next door, but Kate sees that there are some missing bricks at the bottom and discovers that there is a tunnel on the other side. She begins to remove the bricks that are a bit loose, hoping to widen the hole enough for them to pass. Then George hears the metallic sound of that hook that poked him and knows the maniac is coming. With no time to dislodge the bricks, he kicks part of the wall down and tells Kate to hurry. While she is going through the hole, a raspy laugh starts coming from the ceiling, and George panics as he sees the murderer spying on them from the ventilation duct. As soon as they disappear through the hole, he bursts through the cap and leaps out, letting out an animalistic screech through the tunnel. However, a low sob causes him to change his mind, turning around to play with Mandy a little longer. He starts fiddling with the medical equipment as if she were his patient and gently touches her face. She begins to cry and calls for Jimmy, asking someone to help her. Still playing pretend, the maniac goes to the sink and turns on the faucet. It doesn't work, but still, he pretends to be washing his hands. Mandy starts begging him to let her go and swears she will do anything he wants, but her pleas are ignored. After putting on an apron and a pair of filthy gloves, he picks up a sharp utensil and begins the gruesome surgery. Her scream is so loud that Kate can hear it and questions George, asking if Mandy was really dead. He hesitates for a brief moment and then says yes, but warns her that he won't go back to confirm that. The maniac finishes his work in the operating room and heads to the crib room. Looking at the fetuses, he seems haunted by the cries of several babies. On the shelf, there is a photo frame with a picture of a doctor, and the horrendous man doesn't look much. Finally, George and Kate manage to leave the hospital and arrive at a disused subway station, where Kate finds Ray trapped in a cage. By the general state of that place, it is evident that the murderer spends a lot of time there. Kate finds another frame with a picture of the same doctor, but this one also shows a little boy who is clearly the maniac as a child.